Welcome back to another programming video. Today's topic is data structure. We will be looking at tuples. Python is our programming language, and without wasting further time, let's jump straight into it. Now, what are tuples? Tuples are like a list, but unchangeable and immutable. So once you've created a tuple, you cannot add or remove or change the value inside. So that's just something to keep in mind. And there are use cases where you want this to happen intentionally. Some of them could be a record, it could be a configuration to some sort of a database, or I don't know, whatever the use case may be. It could be a location in terms of longitude or latitude. You don't want it to change if you're heading towards some places. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, how you access the value within a tuple. In this case, I'm using the location. You open and close square bracket and you pass in the value or the index of the item that you're trying to retrieve. So in this case, I'm trying to retrieve the item in position 0, and I'm also trying to retrieve the item in position 1. Now, this is the output. Let's just run that, and you can see that we're getting 0, 1. So if you pass a value that doesn't exist, obviously you're going to get an out of range notification telling you that what you're trying to retrieve does not exist. So that's the gist of it. Now, and something to keep in mind also is that when it comes to tuple, just like your list, the value, the first item on the list is always going to be on the index 0. Yeah, 0. Now, I'm going to be looking at the loops. I just thought I should bring that in for maybe a unique use case, because this one is a list of tuples. So basically, I have coordinates, which is your usual list, but then inside, instead of having like a string or integer or float, we have tuples, and we have a way of going about displaying or extracting the data within those tuples. Now in this case, as you can see, a for loop allows us to loop through or go through the entire list item by item, which are comma separated, as you can see. So the first item will be the first tuple here, second item will be the second one, and so on and so forth. Now, the position of the items within the tuples is what I'm extracting here, and these values could be, there could be anything, x or y or whatever. You can put whatever you want to put in there. I just decided to use long, short for longitude, and lat, short for latitude. And then I'm telling Python that the first value in that tuple would be the longitude, and the second one will be the latitude for each item that you're accessing. And that's exactly what Python would do, and we have it. So longitude will be 42, 14, 12, which you can see here, which is the position of the item, comma separated, and latitude. What happened if you had a third one, something of this nature? Yes, you can, and it just means that you're going to add something here. Maybe that's going to be maybe temperature. I'm not sure what it is. Temperature, and that will be retrieved. As a matter of fact, we can give it a try. Let's see, 18, and let's pass in here 45, and then we're gonna pass 78, and then we're gonna run that here, and just add a value here that tells us this is the item that we are trying to retrieve, basically. So I'm gonna put that in here, and we're gonna remove that and put a comma and a space, and then we're gonna call this temp, as in temperature, and then we're gonna pass in the temp. That was a typo there. There was a typo. Okay, and then we're gonna add temp here. Now let's run the code and see what. And here we have it. So we can pass in the value that we want, and then it gets populated automatically. Now, I hope you learned something new there, that is possible to have a list of lists. In this case, a list of tuples, and then add the value as needed and extract them on the go and print them out in just 2 lines of code. And you see how small that is, right? Cool. So now I'm just gonna comment that out and move on to the next example. And in this case, we are now combining tuples with dictionaries. So we have a dictionary of tuples, if we want to put it that way. Usually you would have a simple string here, key value pair, meaning it's just a string, something of this nature, where we have a name. Oh, what happened there? Where we have, let me just clear that again. So we have a name, and then that's a key, and then the value would be maybe double or something on the other side. So, but in this case, we replace the key with a tuple. A tuple has now multiple value inside, and does allow us to be even more specific if you're looking at maybe capturing students' marks for a particular subject, and you want to have them the same name but passing in the values. Something that you also notice that unlike the string, like I showed earlier on, where we pass the name and the value, you cannot have duplicate value. But in this case, it's actually possible to have duplicate value in this nature, but what's going to happen is that only the last value will be displayed. So if you have something like a 94 and a 90, and you're trying to access these value from our code right here, you'll see that the value that will be displayed will be 90, and the last one won't be displayed because of duplicates of keys. So if you run that, you see we're getting 90, but 94 is nowhere to be seen. So, and then if I remove that and I run the code again, you can see I'm seeing 94, and the other value is not visible anymore. So those are just some of the things you need to keep in mind, that there are some trade-off when using certain data structure versus the other, and maybe a combination of both could probably, or many, or one or two, could actually bring about the solution that you're looking for. Now, this is a good example, and the as you can see, we're able to do a little bit more than the usual. So I'm gonna add a last one, and here I am actually querying or asking the user to input the data. Now, instead of having it hard-coded as we have done, we actually asking the user to pass in the value, and then using those values to query our grades, where we've already saved given specific names and values. So I'm gonna add something like this for Table, and then give him a value of 90 because these students are just superb. So I'm gonna say, okay, cool, let's run this code, and it's gonna prompt me with the name. So I'm gonna pass in the name there, Table, and then I'm gonna ask him to pass the value of physics, and we see it's giving me a value of 90. Simple, right? And yes, that is another use case useful that can be applicable in certain scenario where things need to be handled dynamically. But like I said, once the tuple has been created, like you can see, there is really no way to go about adding or removing or changing the values inside the tuples, and the only way is to maybe create another one. Alright, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you've learned something new. Until next time, keep well. Bye bye.